Advertising Manhood, a critical look at images of the male body in advertising messages and their potential effects on boys' self-perception, by Dr. Mónica Belda and Dr. Linda Palfreeman of the Universidad Cardenal Herrera, Elche. Whilst there exists an extensive body of documented research on the representation of women in advertising, there is still comparatively little discussion of the portrayal of men and the potential impact of this on the self-perception of men and boys. The present study seeks to help redress this imbalance. Advertising, they say, is the mirror of society at any given moment. Why is it then that adverts are full of people who don't resemble anyone we know? The answer is that people who appear in adverts are, of course, stereotypes, perfect specimens of their real-life counterparts. Stereotyping is a quick and easy method of representing individuals or groups of people based on a limited range of characteristics and often inaccurate assumptions. Inevitably, given its efficacy as a means of rapid characterization, stereotyping abounds in the media, in films, in television, and of course in advertising. Early studies focus upon the portrayal of women as confined almost exclusively to the domestic sphere, caring for their home and their children, and pandering to the whims of their breadwinning husbands, upon whom they were economically and emotionally dependent. These were followed by the portrayal of women as objects of sexual desire. In the post-feminist advertising of the late 1970s and 80s, we eventually began to see strong, independent women with careers outside the home. Women who no longer went into orgiastic raptures over the whiter-than-white results of a third-weight washing powder. Whilst there is a long history of debate surrounding the representation of women in advertising, the portrayal of men has, until relatively recently, been largely ignored. Traditionally, it was the woman who was used to promote a wide array of products, as traditionally it was the woman who was responsible for the care of the home, her husband, and her children. It was she who did the shopping, the cooking, and the cleaning, whilst men were cowboys, or aeroplane pilots, or occupied other prominent professional roles. Originally, men only appeared alone in adverts for exclusively male products, such as aftershave, alcohol, and tobacco. But things have changed. Men have changed. Or at least, that's what the ads would have us believe. What do the images of male in advertising today tell us about the modern man? It would appear that the old macho male has finally disappeared, partly, no doubt, as a result of relentless social pressure and feminist activism. But there are other, market-orientated issues that play a crucial role in the apparent metamorphosis of the commercial male. Basically, the self-centered, sexist, beer-swilling one of the lad's primitive male did not buy enough. He had to be substituted by the clear-skinned, immaculately coiffed, athletic Adonis of today's ads for Chanel and Armani. More recently, we have witnessed the emergence of a virile but sensitive individual, tender and narcissistic, as capable of caring for his newborn baby as he is of pouring detergent into the washing machine and even of ironing his own shirts. As well as his eye-catching physical attractiveness and impressive muscularity, the mythical new man who emerges from media culture is a successful professional, powerful and sure of himself, a strong yet compassionate partner and caring father. He takes great care of his image and his physical appearance. He shops frequently for clothes, is a regular consumer of cosmetics, and is prepared to spend more than £5 on a haircut. The new man represents an ideal and more caring form of masculinity, a man who is more sensitive to women's needs, has learned to give expression to feelings and emotions, become a more committed father, and has grown remarkably preoccupied with his personal looks. So, what's all the fuss? That men in the media are being transformed into icons of thoughtful, considerate and tenderized masculinity must surely be seen as something positive. But as Fairclough points out, things are not quite so simple. It is essential to emphasize the ideal nature of such representations of masculinity. Before, only women had to be beautiful. Men could rely upon their strength, their powers of paternal protection, and their professional status. Now, being beautiful is part of that success. Now the males in ads exhibit perfectly proportioned bodies and bronzed and youthful features that only the extensive array of creams, lotions, formulas and fragrances can provide. We are witnessing the blossoming of a culture based on narcissism and consumerism. Advertisements for products such as perfumes and skin creams depict idealized images of the new man. Now the male featured in ads takes on the classic role of the female, manipulable, submissive objects. Glossy specimens of the male physique abound. We have grown accustomed to seeing the female body in advertisements dismantled into various erotically significant parts, lips, eyes, legs, which became metonyms of femininity in general and of feminine sexuality. Men, on the other hand, have always appeared whole, until recently, that is. The gradual dismembering of the male began during the 1980s and has continued to the present day, with almost exclusive dependence on sculpted torso as signifier of virility and masculinity. The head, of little or no significance, is often in the shadows, or even missing completely. However, as Barthel affirms, masculine bodies in perfect physical condition signify one thing: the male body as symbolic of sex and power. Thus, the established myth remains intact. Myth, as a form of cultural communication, is the material out of which such structures are built, and through myth, the role of human beings in inventing and reinventing masculinity is disguised and therefore naturalized. Men, as well as women, have now become instruments of mass-produced myths, and they have been maneuvered into this position in a relatively short period of time. Today, a new, more extreme sex and body-obsessed version has emerged, what Mark Simpson has termed the spornosexual. Man as object is well and truly established. In advertising, we have come a long way from somewhat bashful beginnings to the models of today. Consider the transformation from this to this, and from this to this, or this. Today, we see men standing alone, without the slightest hint of angst or apprehension. If we consider the wider picture, we can see that it's not simply the fashion that has changed. Returning to the three males in the first of the photographs, we see that they are looking rather nervously, or at least uncomfortably, about them into the distance. Of course, this could be that they are conscious of the fact that they are three grown men posing in their underwear on a rocky shore. The awkwardness and embarrassment of the men is further hidden by sunglasses. The shot is taken from a slightly elevated position to that of the men by some detached observer, with whom the three show no desire to share any kind of eye contact. The men are vulnerable. Turning our attention to its modern-day parallel, we see a very different picture. Just look at any one of the 5 lean and lustrous males here, for example, and he will stare right back at you, poised, confident, inviting, daring in his self-assured look at me semi-disnudity. And it is we, the interloper, who look upwards somewhat nervously to behold this impressive display of manhood in the latest designer underpants it purports to promote. It is we who glance uneasily over our shoulder to see who might be watching as we take a peek into the men's locker room to scrutinize the merchandise. There exists a degree of contrast between the males in this ad and those of the previous one for the matching men's underpants and vest, where the models get on with the job of advertising the underwear as discreetly as they can. Here, as we can see, that masculinity still includes the presence of body hair, traditionally an important and indisputable sign of maleness. Today, even that has gone. Here there's not a single superfluous hair in sight. If we are to believe what the advertisers are telling us, it is no longer acceptable to use the shower at the local gym without first having used the latest Veet for men. There has been some progression since the days of the first advertisements shown here for the matching pants and vest. With the latest ads, we are no longer selling pieces of clothing. What is unmistakably on offer here is masculinity itself, in its latest version, that is. And all that power, virility, and smouldering sex comes wrapped up in just a few inches of the latest designer lycra. To whom exactly it is being offered is another matter. The designers and advertisers in question, Calvin Klein, Paco Rabanne, Dolce & Gabbana, and others, openly court the gay consumer while striving not to alienate the heterosexual market. While ads contain gratuitous use of women's bodies to get people's attention and to suggest that sexual access is a reward for buying the product, supposed equality in advertising messages of today is simply the representation of the male in the same manner. In television advertising, it all began with the 1985 Levi's jeans commercial, featuring the then unknown youth Nick Kamen, who stripped down to his crisp white boxer shorts in a laundrette to the tune of Marvin Gaye's Through the Grapevine. It was hard to tell whether the ad was more responsible for boosting the sales of jeans or of underpants, but it clearly had an effect, and blazed the trail for later advertisements. Later came the guise of the Diet Coke break commercials that sparked hundreds of proof ads on the World Wide Web. And of course, after a long history of adverts featuring sexually seductive females drooling over an infinite array of dodgy-looking artifacts carved in chocolate, came the chocolate ads starring the new man. Beginning with the Aero ad featuring actor Jason Lewis, subsequently labelled the Aero Hunk. Advertising has, since its very origins, portrayed women as sexual objects, and real-life women in their various ways have had to endure the consequences. Today's ads are objectifying men in the same manner, and the abundance of fit, muscular male figures is causing the same anxieties and personal insecurities suffered for decades by women. The University of Wisconsin, USA, carried out research into the effects of this kind of media image upon male consumers. The study concludes that most men react to these images with admiration or envy. While some might be motivated to take out membership of the local gym or to resolve to lead a healthier lifestyle, others will simply choose to ignore what they see as unattainable, and indeed, perhaps, undesirable representations of reality. For some, however, it can lead to psychological disorders where life revolves around excessive bodybuilding, dieting, and the use of dangerous muscle-enhancing drugs. The unrelenting quest to attain greater muscularity can be likened to that of the quest for thinness, both pursue visual ideals that are impossible to achieve, at least without spot-covering, blemish-removing, hip-reducing, ab-defining, penis-enhancing, airbrushing Photoshop. Psychologists are particularly concerned about the effects of such advertising on adolescent boys. Research has demonstrated that boys are largely unaware of the fact that, quite often, such images are achieved by digital manipulation, and that the image they are pursuing is actually unachievable. Like these photographs of pop star Justin Bieber before and after advertising Photoshop. It is feared that, amidst constant exposure to the specimens of masculinity currently on display, young boys may fret over their own physiques that will be seen to deviate from the acceptable norm, leading, in some cases, to identity dissonance or a conflict of self. These are the same arguments used by a society that objected to the portrayal of women in sexist and demeaning fashion. It is clear, however, that the industry now needs to widen its focus from women and girls. There exist regulatory bodies as well as advisory bodies that encourage those in the industry to use a diversity of male body shapes and sizes to encourage more realistic aspirations among boys. However, research results would indicate that a more proactive approach is required, such as the implementation of media literacy teaching in schools. Teachers should be equipped with the necessary tools and knowledge to look critically at the images portrayed by the media and to address the question of body issues and potential extreme behaviors amongst boys as well as girls. Media literacy programs provide tools to deal with such issues, often providing free teaching materials as well as accessible information for parents and teachers. But with ever-increasing pressure to achieve excellence in the teaching and learning of core curriculum subjects, media literacy lessons rarely figure highly on the school agenda. Thank you.